Hey YouTube, this is PokéCastXVll here, and today we're going to be looking at a deck that has been around now for a while, but with every passing format refuses to go away, and that deck is Night March. Night March, ever since the banning of Lysander's trump card, has proven to be a formidable contender in the format, constantly racking up various high tournament victories. So what makes Night March so good? Let's start with a breakdown as to how the deck functions. So the concept of Night March is relatively simple. By using cards like Battle Compressor, Ultra Ball, and other ways of discarding your Night Marches, your primary goal is to dump as many Pokemon with the Night March attack into the discard pile, which allows you to hit for excessive numbers. Within the deck, you have 3 targets with the Night March attack, 2 of which you can attack with, and 1 is purely for the purpose of discarding it: Joltik, Pumpkaboo, and Lampent. Naturally, your first target when using Battle Compressor will be Lampent, as other than sitting in your discard pile, it's just dead weight and not a card you want sitting in your hand. Joltik functions off just a single double colorless energy, as does Pumpkaboo when you have Dimensional Valley in play. And so that is the basic concept of the deck, but what other Pokemon do you have that supports your Night Marches? In the standard format, a Night March deck will usually contain somewhere in the region of 3 to 4 Shaman EXs. Having Shaman EX for the use of setup allows you to draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. When you consider that you're constantly using cards like Ultra Ball, Trainer's Mail, and Battle Compressor to thin out your hand size, it allows you to maximize Shaman to its fullest potential and draw through more of your resources. With that, you repeat the cycle to use Ultra Ball to discard unnecessary resources, add more Night March Pokemon, and then proceed to searching out for another Shaman EX after thinning your hand. On top of that, you still have your supporter card for the turn. Other forms of drawing can include cards such as Acrobike and Roller Skates, depending on how you want to build the deck. Again, this deck has benefited greatly with the release of Breakpoint and has proven that by winning week 1 of the state championships in the US. But what cards does it gain from Breakpoint, and how does it change the way Night March is played? The first card that Night March gains is the benefit of Fighting Fury Belt, which when attached to a basic Pokemon gives it a plus 40 HP, as well as dealing an additional 10 damage in the process. Even though I am still a big fan of Muscle Band, the additional 40 HP does give your low HP Night March Pokemon, especially Joltik, that little more chance of not being easily KO'd. Some examples of this include Bat Damage as well as Quaking Punch and Sky Return. The second and most probable notable inclusion from Breakpoint is Puzzle of Time. When using 2 Puzzle of Time at the same time, you can retrieve any 2 cards within your discard pile. In the past, we've seen a similar engine with Milotic, in where you can retrieve any single card. However, Puzzle of Time allows you to get an additional card by playing 2. This is far superior, as you can play Puzzle of Time right off the bat without having to wait for a turn to evolve, or worry about cards like Hex Maniac or Lysander to KO your Feebas. While this allows a form of fishing out any resources you're needing to set up within your discard pile, it can also act as a form of recovery for your Night March Pokemon if you are wearing thin, and more importantly, a form of recovering energy. Most Night March lists will usually only run 4 double colorless energy, so having a way to recover them is extremely important. And with that, pretty much concludes the basis of the deck. Its sheer speed and consistency is what leads Night March keeping it at the top of the tables for so long. With that, let's look at some things that can potentially hurt you if you are playing Night March. Firstly, and as briefly mentioned earlier, bats have been known to slow down your Night March Pokemon. Even with Fighting Fury Belt, constantly spamming your bat line with cards like Super Scoop Up and AZ can prove to be quite a nuisance, especially when they're ditching your energy in the process. You can also encounter the same problem when facing Greninja, however, this is easily fixable through running cards like Hex Maniac. The bigger question is, how often can you continually spam Hex Maniac with cards like Puzzle of Time and VS Seeker, as the effect only stays in play for 1 turn. Other cards that can hurt your Night March Pokemon are cards like Seismitoad and Giratina, often paired together. Your deck is heavily reliant on item cards, so naturally being item locked is going to slow you down quite significantly. However, you are guaranteed a turn of items in which your primary goal will be hitting a turn 1 180 damage, knocking out Seismitoad if they don't have a Fighting Fury Belt attached. If you do have a lackluster turn, then unfortunately it can be quite difficult to recover from. As for Giratina, Chaos Will prevents you from playing any tool cards, stadiums, and special energies, all cards that Night March functions off, especially the special energy, as you don't run any basic. Giratina is metagame dependent and it does struggle a lot against Yveltal. However, cards like Enhanced Hammer and Xerosic are both good targets for disrupting Giratina, as you are open to playing item cards again. On the topic of item lock, if your opponent opens up with a turn 1 Trevenant, that can also be a bit of a pain to tackle unless you are able to Lysandra around it, or of course a turn 1 Vileplume. And finally, if you do run into any fighting decks like Lucario or Garchomp, expect them to run cards like Focus Sash as a means to not having the fighting Pokemon one-hit KO'd. Again, this is easily fixed if you are running something like Starsling Megaphone or Xerosic, as it does serve two purposes. Finally, one of the main appeal for Night March is that it's relatively cheap to build. With the exception of Shaman EX, most of the cards included in the deck are all commons and uncommons and are easily accessible. VS Seekers might put you out a little as they are splashable in almost every deck, much like Shaman EX. However, if you are a competitive player and attend tournaments frequently but don't already own the cards, then I would strongly advise investing in them, as both VS Seeker and Shaman EX will be around for another year or two in the current metagame. I would also advise playing 4 Shaman, however you can also get away with 3 depending on how you choose to build the deck. And so that is pretty much it. That is Night March all concluded for you and why it's been succeeding in the current metagame. If you would like to see more Pokemon related content, all you have to do is click the annotations at the end of this video. Alternatively, there will be a subscribe button there as well if you would like to subscribe to the channel for future uploads. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching and I will see you all next time.